She hissed in my ear. Wow, you really know how to make a girl wish she didn't have something incredibly important to rush off to. I savored the moment. Opportunities like that were rare, so I made sure to appreciate every second of it. I continued to press the point a little further, lowering my voice as I spoke. Terry, you know deep down that I'm going to make you completely lose yourself, and when I do, you won't be able to hold back, right? Nick, please don't tease me like that. I'm begging you, just stop, all right? I squinted one eye and adopted an exaggerated look of deep contemplation while she shifted restlessly on the picnic table, clearly reacting to my deliberate pause. Just yesterday, I had been an ordinary guy experiencing his very first day of high school. Now, somehow, I found myself in a situation I could hardly comprehend. A stunning blonde girl was pleading with me to stop teasing her, simply because the moment wasn't appropriate for anything more. It felt surreal, almost unbelievable. Yet there it was, happening right in front of me, and no matter how strange it seemed, I had no choice but to accept it as reality. All right, I'll stop, but only because I'm a nice guy, I said, doing my best to keep a straight face despite her obvious discomfort, which I found far too amusing. There was really nothing I could do to help her just then. Look, I added gently, I'm sure your turn will come soon enough. You know you want it, and you know I intend to follow through, so there's no need to worry. After all, good things come to those who are patient. And I would know, having spent most of my teenage years waiting for the chance to get truly close and personal with members of the fairer sex. Don't say that unless you really mean it, she teased, a familiar sparkle returning to her eyes. She seemed perfectly content to leave things where they were until we could meet again, probably out by the shed. I really have to go now. I'll talk to you later, she added, wagging a playful finger at me before hurrying off. I found myself wondering what could possibly be so important, but I had a feeling I would find out sooner or later. With that thought, I let it go and didn't dwell on it any further. I glanced at my watch and let out a quiet sigh when I realized I still had 45 minutes to pass before I could catch the bus home. What was I supposed to do with all that time? I had no idea. With nothing better to occupy myself, I lit another cigarette, finished it slowly, and then wandered back into the school. I had just turned the corner on my way to the washroom when I was suddenly and completely bowled over by a tall, broad-shouldered brunette coming from the opposite direction. Wham! My head struck the floor immediately, and the pain followed just as fast. Stars burst across my vision, spinning and swirling like a shattered kaleidoscope, and a loud groan escaped my mouth as I tried to process what had just happened. Oh my goodness! Are you all right? She exclaimed, looking down at me with genuine concern in her eyes. Please, say something. Hi. I'm Nick, was all I managed to say as I looked up at her from where I lay flat on my back. From that angle, she truly did resemble something out of myth, an Amazonian figure, tall and powerfully built. She wasn't large in an awkward way, but impressively so, with a strong, statuesque presence that immediately caught the eye. Her long legs and confident posture were perfectly balanced with the rest of her frame, giving her a sense of effortless grace. She was undeniably striking, and her face, poised and refined, completed the picture beautifully. I am so sorry, Nick. I was thinking about something else and didn't see you coming. She looked genuinely miserable for having knocked me over, and I hated seeing that kind of distress on a woman's face. I let out another groan as I tried to lift myself off the floor. I'm okay, really, I am, I insisted, though the floor seemed determined to keep hold of me. I couldn't even make it to my knees, and I ached in places I hadn't known existed. Let me help you, she exclaimed. True to her word, she bent down and lifted me up as if I weighed nothing at all. Good heavens, she was tall, strong, and impressively solid. I could only stare in stunned disbelief as she set me back on my feet. She set me back on my feet, but the moment she let go, I immediately began to topple again. My head throbbed, my vision still spinning wildly, and I could only make out vague shapes through the haze of bright stars dancing across my sight. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if this was what people meant when they talked about having a truly terrible trip, completely disoriented, overwhelmed, and powerless to stop the world from reeling around them. Oh my goodness. Please don't fall again. Hold on to me, she exclaimed, her voice edged with alarm as she pulled me upright once more and held me close, her arms wrapped securely around my back. I slipped my arms around her in return and tried to steady myself, but my legs refused to cooperate and I struggled to maintain my balance. She took my full weight without hesitation, slipping her arms beneath my shoulders to steady me and keep me from stumbling again. The sudden movement drew me close to her, closer than I had expected, and for a brief, dizzy moment I became acutely aware of how securely she was holding me. Despite my unsteady balance, her firm support kept me upright, and I found myself silently grateful for her strength and quick reaction. I groaned softly as I rubbed the back of my head. It was swollen and throbbed with pain. My voice came out somewhat muffled due to the awkward position of my face. Startled by my weak sound, she quickly lifted me up and carried me down the hallway to the women's changing room. There, she carefully set me on a bench and held me steady, making sure I did not lose my balance. I looked around in alarm and realized where I was, the women's changing room. If I were caught here, I would almost certainly be expelled from school. Panic surged through me as I tried to stand, but I was immediately steadied before I could topple over again. "Easy there, Nick," she said gently, concern evident in her voice. "You need to sit still for a while before trying to get up again." I admitted to myself that she was absolutely right and forced myself to stay still. She crouched down in front of me, her face level with mine, and looked directly into my eyes. Slowly, she waved her hand back and forth in front of my face, carefully watching my eyes as she did so. "Well, I don't think you're seriously hurt, just a little shaken. I'm sure you'll feel better in a few minutes." She gently took my hands in hers as she continued to study me with a careful, attentive expression. I briefly wondered if she was right, but the thought didn't linger for long. My eyes, acting on their own accord, took in her appearance in a slow and unmistakably thorough glance. She didn't seem bothered in the slightest by my obvious attention, remaining calm and composed as I looked her over from head to toe. "Take your time, there's no hurry," she said gently. I paused, unsure whether she meant that I should wait until I was steady enough to stand again, or whether she had noticed my lingering gaze and was encouraging me not to rush. She smiled warmly, her bright white teeth catching the light as she did, and the moment felt unexpectedly reassuring. She was very tall. Even while squatting, she seemed nearly as tall as I was sitting on the bench. I found myself wondering what grade she was in and whether she had a boyfriend. Why that thought crossed my mind, I couldn't say. I had never considered something like that before. She was dressed in a cheerleader's uniform, neatly tailored in the school's colors, giving her a polished and spirited appearance. It fit her very well, snug in all the right places, accentuating her figure in a way that was both striking and impossible to ignore. It was short enough that I could clearly see the bright fabric of her undergarments beneath it, the outline unmistakable despite my blurred vision. The sight caught me off guard, and I blinked several times, trying to steady my focus and make sense of what I was seeing. Everything still felt slightly unreal, as though my eyes and my thoughts were a step out of sync. "So, you like what you're seeing?" she asked, her voice calm and entirely unembarrassed. She knew exactly where my attention had been and didn't scold me for it. I lifted my gaze to her face, slowing just enough to register her striking figure before finally meeting her eyes. "Yes, I like what I'm seeing actually. I really, really like what I'm seeing," I said, my voice growing bolder when she didn't tell me to look away. Encouraged by her silence, I realized she was well aware of exactly where my attention was focused, and she seemed neither surprised nor offended by it. "Well, I'm not going to have time to go out and practice now. You stay right there and don't move a muscle." I murmured a weak, "Okay," and did exactly as I was told, sitting perfectly still while I watched her turn away and open her gym locker. She opened the door, then pulled her cheerleader top over her head and set it neatly on the bench beside me. One piece of clothing after another was removed and added to the small pile, her movements casual and unhurried. She seemed completely focused on what she was doing, apparently forgetting that I was sitting behind her. I watched in quiet astonishment as she finished changing right there in the room, entirely at ease with the situation. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. This woman was changing right in front of me, as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. In moments, she was down to just her socks and sneakers. From where I sat, I could only see her back, her striking figure, and a hint of her chest from the side. My head swam as she bent forward to untie her shoes and peel off her socks. I nearly lost my composure, wondering if she realized how exposed she appeared from my angle when she leaned down like that. She turned to look at me and said, "I need to take a shower, and you need to stay right where you are. If anyone comes in, just close your eyes and groan as if you're in pain. Can you do that for me, Nick?" I assured her that I could, and said as much aloud. I was still unsteady from the fall and didn't feel capable of standing, no matter how hard I tried. Besides, the view from where I was sitting was undeniably impressive. She quickly packed her clothes into her locker before disappearing behind the wall of the showers. Moments later, the sound of running water echoed through the room as she rinsed off. After several minutes, she emerged again, still damp from the shower, and walked back in my direction as though nothing out of the ordinary had happened. I couldn't help but notice as she walked confidently to her locker and pulled a towel out from inside.